Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Glass Half Full, a podcast and a safe platform where we talk with a variety of teachers, entrepreneurs, spiritualists, uplifters, givers, shakers, and serenaders. Everyone has a lesson to learn and a lesson to share. Let's use our life experiences to enrich someone's heart, mind, spirit, and soul. Through sharing our experiences, we can be a learning inspiration for one another. I'm your host, Chris Levins. If you love the show and want to support us, you can become a monthly subscriber or make a one-time donation. Just look for the heart icon or the support link on our podcast platform. We're so grateful for your continued support. It helps us keep making this show even better. Let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest is Nicholas Ruchlewicz. Nicholas is an advocate tabletop role player, music, and concert lover. He is also a trauma survivor. After being involved in a motorcycle crash, suffered a traumatic brain injury and a very long recovery. Going through this, he has been able to use his struggles to help others as a mental health advocate. He has spoken to international organizations, political organizations, as well as the United States Congress to address some of these concerns with trauma and mental health access and coverage. Let's welcome Nicholas Ruchlewicz. Woo-hoo!
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the excitement.
Oh, thank you for being a guest here on Glass Half Full. We're happy to have you today.
Happy to be here. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Can you tell everyone where you are in the world and what time it is, please?
What time is it? Well, it's 7 a.m. and I'm right outside of Washington, D.C. In the United States, Northern Virginia. So
excellent. Nice. I like D.C. I went to university in Northern Virginia, so I know the area.
Oh, it's awesome. What university?
Shenandoah University, Conservatory of Music in Winchester.
Yep. I know exactly where it is. Yep.
Oh, nice. All right, we're going to jump right on in. I like to ask all my guests this first question. I believe that our lives are in spiritual design. Can you share your life layout with everyone, your blueprint, how you grew up, where, your family lifestyle?
Sure. I'm, from, Northern Virginia, DC area, I was very fortunate. I grew up with a lot of diversity around me, just being in that historical landmark of the United States and, just having a lot of access to a lot of, various public services like museums and such. But, I guess I grew up a regular kid. My family had a rough separation divorce when I was, roughly 10, 11. So it was definitely very difficult kind of growing up and just a lot of changes. I didn't go to any, secondary education. I just went to high school and I was very, I just didn't feel comfortable with financial gain going to college. So I started right away in just working small jobs, grocery stores, pharmacy tech, et cetera. And then I was able to fortunately land a job where I started pulling wire in homes. And then all of a sudden, 26 years later, I've been in a low voltage audio, video, telecommunications field. So it was definitely worth its weight. I'm a very big advocate of blue collar work. And I think that we don't put a lot of emphasis in our society for that, but I digress. That could be another, 3-hour conversation. Through my work and in different parts of my life, I had a real rough original, first marriage and separation. And that definitely left me in some pretty dark holes. I was able to pull myself out and right after I got separated, I got a motorcycle license. I was excited. I had a lot of friends and I thought I had friends through work and other sources that were riders, and I was excited to ride with them. So I bought a bike and, rode it around some, and then it was weird. It was snowing at that time of year, and I didn't want to take my brand new bike on salty roads in Northern Virginia. So I rode around a storage unit for, about a week or so. And then something happened. My mom, I was in separation. I was living with my mom in the basement, renting out the basement, and then something freaked happened. Nobody knew where I was, and then found friends, called friends, and then I was at my storage unit. The police came. My friend broke in, so it wasn't
Oh,
breaking
no.
and entering. And then I was taken to a trauma center where I was after I had a motorcycle crash.
Okay. So we're gonna come back to that. I just wanted to touch around
Okay.
your build-up about who you are so we can have an idea about it. I have a few questions for you. Do you have any
Yep.
siblings? Did you guys have any pets?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. For sure. I have a. Sorry,
Okay.
I guess I got sidetracked. I have a brother, younger
Okay.
brother. He's definitely someone I care about greatly. I'm very
Oh.
proud of him. He's a school teacher. He teaches advanced math, like multivariable calculus. So
Okay.
I said, you ran out of numbers. You started using weird letters. So
Right.
but my father's from Philadelphia, so I have
Okay.
some godparents that live outside of Philly,
Nice.
so I get to see them. My father's in Northern Virginia as well.
Oh.
Pets, growing up, I had cats and I loved them to death. And then something was going on in 2014. I was like, I guess it was 2009. Sorry. But I remember watching the show LA Inc. and there was this guy who got a tattoo that matched his dog's like diamond on his back. It was this dog, a Basenji. I was like, oh, this sounds like it's like a aloof dog. It's family friendly. I was like, oh, okay, great. So I started reading him and said it was difficult to train. So I got this little puppy, and he was a little terror. I loved him to death. And I say they're not difficult to train. They train me well. So,
Okay.
unfortunately, then I moved with my ex-wife. We had an apartment for a while. I got another puppy, Athena, and then
Oh,
he was
wow.
Aries. And then my wife and I separated. And now, so yeah, it was me and my dogs, Aries and Athena. They
And
were
they're
my,
still with you now?
no, unfortunately, I had to say goodbye to my champ in
Oh.
2021, and that was some of the hardest thing I've ever thought in my life. I mean,
Oh.
the guy was there with me through everything, through my
Right.
marriage, my separation, my new marriage, my trauma.
Wow.
So but he taught me how to be strong. He taught me how to do it. I saw a pet loss therapist when I said goodbye to him, and
Mm.
the therapist said, Aries allowed you to be loved,
Yes.
and that really shook home. But so I have two dogs now. I have a puppy. Well, he's not a puppy. He's 4 years old. But I have Orion and Athena. Athena's still a good girl. She plays for an old lady. She still
Oh.
has stuff. But yeah, so I'm remarried. I love my
Okay.
wife to death. Very different than my
Congratulations.
first situation. Thank you. Yeah, she was there. She was a big part of my recovery, and she was there with me. And people will say, "Oh, you got married because she helped in your marriage." I'm like, "All right, before your accident." I'm like, "No, I married her because I loved her." So it was
Right.
just, it was great, the gift we could give each other for each other's support. So,
Nice.
and through that, and obviously we're going to my trauma stuff, and I've been my nerd street cred, as I say, is pretty high. I collected comic books. I've played D&D before it was popular. I used to be chased out of, threatened at school or beat up because I read that crap.
That's so
So it was
funny.
definitely a very different world than it is now. So I
Mm.
always say I like to, I suffered for you guys, you damned whippersnappers. So that's yeah. So I mean that's kind of, and obviously we'll expand on the
Yes,
different
yes,
stuff
we're
that's kind
look,
of brought me
we
here.
gonna
Yeah,
get to it for sure. Nice, 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 nice. It's always nice to just for people just to share a little bit so that folks really get a connection when they can feel the sense of like, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, I understand that. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing
of
that.
course.
Okay, so there's no children. Did you have any? Do you have any kids?
That's correct. I do. I have two awesome dogs. I
Okay,
wish I
just wanted to
could
make sure that
claim my taxes.
I hadn't missed any.
Yep.
The pets are the kids. They're the kids.
Yep. Exactly.
Nice, nice. Okay, I want you to take us back to the story of the motorcycle crash. And how old are you at this point so we can have an idea about the timeline? And yeah, tell us about the moment that you realized that your life had changed.
So it was a dark and stormy night. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't dark and stormy.
Dun dun
It was
dun.
it was dark. Yeah. So like I said, I still live with my mother, and it was very different situation after the separation. It was pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I didn't come home. Mom was like, "Why are the dogs freaking out?" My brother said, "I don't know." She called my girlfriend, not my wife. She called my other, and then my girlfriend called my other friend, or met someone on Facebook, and then the person on Facebook gave the number, call all this thing, and they all coordinated to go to this unit where I was.
Now,
They went there.
now let me back us up a little bit. So, where were you that they were expecting you to be somewhere? Were you supposed to be at home? Where were you supposed to be?
Well, there's no technically supposed to be,
Okay.
but when we have habits, it's good we have habits, and it's good to kind of understand, what makes you tick. I didn't go to a game that night. A lot of
Oh,
times I'll
okay.
go to the game, but I'm always with my dogs. I love my dogs more than anything else, and
Okay.
especially after my separation. My separation was really tough, so I made sure I had them before then. They're going to stay with me. They were with me forever. So
Mm-hmm.
when the dogs were freaking out, it's like, where's Nicholas? So he hasn't been home in like 6 hours. Like, what's going on? Or,
Okay.
probably about 4 hours. So because I was rode for a few hours for my crash.
Mm-hmm.
So they all started kind of freaking out. This is probably at 10, probably 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, so it's
So
late.
that's when yeah. So like I said, my mom knew my girlfriend's number, called my girlfriend. She didn't know my other friend's number who used to ride a motorcycle with. So she texted someone on Facebook, first on Facebook, then gave the guy's number. They all came to this unit. So I had a storage unit that kept all my stuff after when I moved out. So I have a motorcycle in there, and I rode it out before, right when I got it, but like I said, it snowed, so I didn't want to take it the main road. So I just rode it around my storage unit, like every night for a few nights, for a couple hour or two,
Mm-hmm.
just to have fun and learn, just be more comfortable with it.
And then put it
And
back into the storage.
yep, yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Because I wanted to ride it home, but I couldn't. Like I said, I was terrified of all the salt ruining my paint. If
Okay.
again, who
Okay.
knows what would have happened if I would have taken it home? Who knows if I would have gotten it hurt? But it doesn't really matter. So people were freaking out. My friend went in there, broke in. The cops said, "Let me go in, so it's not breaking and entering." So then, 6 minutes later, 3 minutes later, the paramedics show up. So I was roughly seen on camera at 7:31, and the paramedics showed up at 11:20. So roughly 4 hours I was lying there. So
Now let
we
me
don't
get
know
this
what
straight. So you're
happened.
lying inside where are you lying at?
So there was a lot of storage units are relatively large with, roadways and stuff. So
Okay.
I would ride around a loop and take little, corners and such. And there was I can literally point it to it exactly on a map. I mean, it was at Alexandria right near
I know
not too far from my
Alexandria.
home, but
Yeah.
yeah. So there was a small wall in there, an embankment, a cinder block. So I crashed into that. I mean, if I would have gone 6 feet other, I would have been fine. So it was just such a weird thing. And I believed it was a mechanical issue. It doesn't really matter what happened,
Okay.
but I was
You just
lying there.
lost
Yeah.
control.
Somehow, yeah. I believed it wouldn't. I believed it wouldn't go out of gear like when you pulled the throttle. But hey, who knows?
Okay.
So anyhow, I crashed into a wall, single vehicle.
Mm.
Who knows what happened? I definitely flew over the handlebars, hit the wall. I was wearing a 3/4, helmet with a face bubble, but I separated my pelvic circle. I
Oh.
broke my sacroiliac. I crushed my left orbital, and I massive concussion, right side brain bleed. It was on March 15th, 2016. So March 15th is the Ides of March.
Yeah.
It's also when March is also Traumatic Brain Injury Month. So I would say
Oh,
I got
wow.
double jeopardy. So, I was injured, police showed up. I was technically responsive at the scene. I was making noise when they tried to talk to me. I was taken to the paramedics. Fortunately, my family never saw me at the scene.
Mm-hmm.
What really sucked is because I think the storage unit, if they would have done their nightly pass at like 8 p.m., they would have found me. Doesn't really matter though, but I was taken to there's a level 1 trauma center in Fairfax, Inova, and I was taken there by EMT. And fortunately, it was only like, a 10-minute ride or less. So, I was there. I went right up to the trauma unit. They were worried about, did a bone pierce my brain? What was
Mm-hmm.
going on? Fortunately, I have one cut around my eye. Otherwise, I would have bled to death because of all the internal bleeding by my pelvis. So, and fortunately I lost, a lot of weight before my accident. So I decided to fortunately gain it all back, but also, I think that obviously helped because, my skin was able to, I separated pelvic about 4 inches. So your pelvis isn't supposed to separate that much. So anyhow, I was right in the trauma unit, and then, yeah. So, I mean, I can go
Wow.
into, what do you want me? You want me to stop? You want me to keep
Yeah,
going?
no,
What
I'm gonna
sounds?
jump. Look, I was just taking a pause because I've got questions.
Okay.
Okay, you've been taken into the hospital. The family doesn't find out that you are there until how long after?
Well, my family knew I was going right to the hospital.
Okay,
Because the police came there with them, and
oh,
that's when they
okay,
had this whole thing. I can't come in. There's nothing wrong here. And that's when my friend went in. So they all
okay,
knew I
okay,
was going to the hospital.
got
So
it.
my girlfriend lived in D.C. at the time, so she was like jumping in a taxi, like in her pajamas, like freaking out, what's going on with me. So they all met at Inova Fairfax, and that's where they, I mean, fortunately, I was stable when I went in.
And were you aware
I
of
mean,
what was happening? What's happening on your side?
no,
Okay, you're completely
absolutely not. So yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I was never in a coma. I mean, I was never really unconscious. I guess I don't really know that,
Well,
but right side brain injury is there. Each part of your brain controls different parts. So right side controls the left side of your body, but it's also how you have vision, cognitive thoughts, awareness, compulsivity, problem solving, etc. So I don't think my body, I think with the brain injury, then I don't know what happened. Now, it also could be how my body is trying to protect me. Not
mm-hmm.
sure, but kind of is what it is at this point. There's no reason, how or why. It was just what.
Well,
Um,
so when you wake
so
up from this, what? Let me ask you, how long were you in the hospital?
all right, so that's double question. So,
Oh, okay, okay. Look, we
um,
got double. Okay,
yep.
take your
So,
time.
gotcha. So again, I wasn't in a coma, but I wasn't cognizant. I went
Okay.
through many surgeries. So, and we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but so through every brain injury is different. Every 100% injury, they call it the invisible injury. We don't really know what's going on. So, even though I was not unconscious, I would respond to things, but I have zero memory. So it's like
Okay.
12-day gap where nothing
Wow.
happened, but I was there. It's one of the scariest things. Every time if I get,
Wow.
it's tough to think about sometimes. Just that that emptiness that was there, even though I was there. But like when I was going through pain spikes, and my girlfriend would play my Pandora radio, which was a heavy metal station I cultivated very clearly: Typo Negative, Lacuna Coil, Opeth, Deftones, and it was interesting. So like when I was going through pain spikes, my blood pressure would rise, and my girlfriend would play my music, and literally would drop. So I do remember like crazy quote unquote dreams where I was like, man, this is pretty cool. We're in like a funeral, everybody's around me, and I'm hearing Typo Negative. This is pretty awesome.
Oh,
So
wow.
since my brain injury happened, I have zero memory of what was going on. Like, I mean, they had to pull my face down to redo my eye socket. Let's
Oh
say that
my
movie Face
gosh.
Off's full of crap. They did pelvic sutures to hold it together. But since I was not aware of what needed to happen
You
because of
couldn't
the
keep still.
injury, they had to tie me down.
Yeah,
If they
because you
didn't tie
couldn't.
me one day, yeah. And I kept trying to get up because what adult male or what adult person wants to be tied in bed? And I remember one nurse didn't believe in it. I ended up pulling staples out of my head.
Oh
I
my
pulled the
gosh.
intubator out,
Oof.
and then I stood up to urinate. And
Mm.
then I ended up finding out I broke the sutures in my pelvis. So
Oh my
now I had to go back
gosh.
in, and I
Whew.
have a plate holding my pelvis together. It's like a little chain type thing. So my pelvis can never come apart, I promise you.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Wow,
so
Nicholas. That's
yeah,
intense.
and then yeah, it was pretty cool.
Listen to
So
you.
that was it's so in the trauma, and we'll talk more to this. There's support groups for family and patients.
Mhm.
They weren't active when I was in the trauma unit in 2016. So I was 35 years old.
Okay,
So
I was about to
I was
say
35 years
what's
old.
our age at the
Yeah.
time? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was 35 at the time, but there wasn't a lot of family support or patient support services when I was in my trauma unit. But I was taken then to Mount Vernon Rehabilitation Acute Rehab Center. So I remember waking up quote unquote waking up, was where I started to become cognizant of what's going on. I saw two of everything. I couldn't move my left side.
And this is how
I
many
had a
days
hard time.
after the initial?
13,
Okay.
13 days.
Okay. Wow.
So I remember being transferred to the hospital. I remember because the paramedic person said, oh, yeah, the transport said, my name's Kyle. I taken there. And that's where things started firing, because I said, Kyle, that's my girlfriend's brother's name. So that's
Wow.
when things started trying to, yeah. So I got into the unit. I was like, my mother and father in the same room. I was like, what the hell's going on here? And they said, you're in a real bad, yeah. You're in a real bad crash. You suffered, you busted your pelvis and you had a head injury. And, it made sense. Fortunately, I still had my appendages. I didn't do anything. So I was like, okay. I didn't really understand what was going on with my left side, why I couldn't feel it or why I really couldn't see. So first day came into, rehab. And the next day, I always say they have these damn letters on your board, first your name. And I always say the date was wrong. It definitely was not March 27th, but it definitely was.
Okay, so we're in the rehab center, right?
Yeah.
This is
So,
where you're taking us.
12 days later. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So now we're in the rehab center, and now the rehabilitation is beginning, or the recovery point is starting, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Inpatient. So I was there for roughly 2 weeks. Yeah. So the first one, speech therapy, I was like, why the hell do I need this? I could talk fine. And that's when I really realized other stuff was going on, because one of my, I'm a project manager, I'm a problem solver. I used to do field engineering. So, not being able to problem solve was very crushing to me, because that was my almost identity. And, again, that's a right side brain injury, what it could do, executive function. So I had a lot of work on that, and that scared the hell out of me, because I didn't want to be, this is something that's such a strong identity for me. But, but I had to learn how to occupational therapy. I had to learn how to clean myself, restroom, shower, but I was non-weight bearing. So I was still in a wheelchair. So I learned how to wheelchair transfer, and I say I can parallel park a wheelchair like no tomorrow. But I was there for roughly 2 weeks. So I left on April 15th, 2016. I have all these great memories of where, and then I was sent home. Again, I had a rough separation, so I was living in my mom's basement. Well, the only way to get me down there, they had to wheel me down a grass hill. I had to get a wheelchair ramp, and I had to pull the handles off the wheelchair to slide into the small sliding glass door. There was a step in the room I went in, so I couldn't use the restroom. So I had to buy a drop down commode, and that was where I was for a few weeks. So that was definitely very humiliating in many ways, having to, restroom, bag your own stuff. It's like, what the hell, but, so I was at home for roughly 2 weeks. I couldn't have a lot of home therapy because I was physically unable to, because of the confinement, because of the area. But when I could get outpatient, I started doing that. I remember doing, like in the hospital, we had 3 therapies a day, and, I'd be exhausted. And when you're an outpatient, it's always important. I tell people to talk to their insurance, figure out what's going on, because you don't want to outpace your healing. So I was able to go, because of my insurance stuff, I was able to go twice a week, and then once a week, and then every other week, until I started getting better. So, I mean, it was a long recovery. It was in outpatient for roughly 3 months. And like I said, sometimes all day, every other day, and other times it was once, and then every other week. And it had a lot of different activities, learning how to multitask, trying to be interrupted while you're trying to do work, trying to use your hands for accuracy to pick stuff up, had to work on eye exercises, learn how to use my eyes again.
Wow, it was like
and then,
restarting lots of things all over again.
Yeah. And then when I remember I could walk. I mean, a therapist was like, okay, you're not going to be in a cane. You're going to be on a walker. And I laughed. I was like, yeah, right. I'm going to walk her right out of here. July 15th, 2016. I remember that day very clearly, because those are the hardest 12 steps I ever took in my life. I put the parallel bars, and I had to walk. And if you ever think of like a baby, when they're walking, their bottom's moving around and they're ready to fall, it's exactly what it was like for me. So again, you're an adult male, and you're all of a sudden not able to, having to relearn how to walk it was very hard. And I hated my walker. I hated it, but I realized it was definitely a necessary tool for it. And So I was fortunate enough, I had short-term disability, so I was okay with my work, and I came back, and it was very different coming back in a new environment. I went to my games, which were my biggest social network, and that was really tough because the environment, the noise, the light, and also, but I tried to push myself into those uncomfortable areas. I had to relearn how to use my hands and feeling. So I would move the pieces and stuff with my hands. It's role
Mm.
playing and games or mathematical and analytical and creative thought. So I was able to practice my stuff I learned in speech therapy to kind of learn to do that. I
Both
went back to
physically,
work.
yeah, you're rebuilding
Yeah,
physically
physically and mentally.
and
Yeah.
mentally. Let's hear a word from one of our sponsors, Body and Voice Studios. Want to improve your singing, strengthen your vocal projection, or refine your diction? Now, you can take voice lessons from anywhere in the world with Body and Voice Studios. Their expert vocal coaches offer personalized online lessons so you can learn to sing from the comfort of your home, no matter where you are. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced singer, they'll give you the tools and understanding you need to use your voice with confidence. Mention Glass Half Full Podcast and receive 10% off your first trial lesson online. Visit www.bodyandvoicestudios.com to get started today. Again, visit www.voicestudios.com.
Yeah, and then when I went back to work, remember first it was like, oh, you're gonna, I had 24 hours a week, and I was like, oh, this could be easy, but I tell you, 24 hours a week was
It was tough,
exhausting.
I'm sure.
24, yeah, 32, 40, and I've been at 60, 70 hours since then, but it doesn't really matter a week. But it was tough. And I came back in a walker. And I remember very clearly there was a gentleman that was one of my cube mates right next to me. I didn't know him before my accident, my trauma, my crash. I don't want to call it an accident, it was a crash. So I didn't know him before, and he's a new project manager. We were chatting some. I remember coming back, went up for something. I was in my walker, and he's like, you're moving really well. I was like, thanks, man. He's like, no, I mean, you're really moving well. I was like, yeah, dude, thanks. Like, what the hell? And they said, he's like, well, I was in a car crash in 99. My body was basically split in half. My leg was crushed. I was in a coma for 2 months. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, what's going on? What do you mean? And so you would have never known it.
Mm-hmm.
And, the man is one of my best friends now. And he actually became one of the groomsmen of my wedding. I mean, just the aspect of what he was able to do and show me that, stuff doesn't define you and you really can. So he was another mentor of mine
Was that a
that I
turning point
had.
for you in your recovery?
It it was, but I mean, truthfully, I mean, I had a lot of great turning points. I mean, so I've never had a lot of self value and self worth. It's just something that happens with males, depression, etc.
And are you talking
And
about just before the accident?
before my accident and definitely after. So also, again, I kept, I'm jumping around a bit because it's a lot to take in 9 years. But I was, again, I had a rough separation. I remember going to therapy originally to try to help my wife out with what she was going through, my ex, and I found out how to help myself. So therapy was a very big part of who I was.
Hmm.
My trauma happened. I was still in therapy, and then I didn't see my therapist for roughly a month because I was in the hospital. I remember going there, seeing her in a wheelchair, girlfriend riding me in there, driving me in there, and then a week later, she suffered a heart attack and couldn't practice anymore.
This
So,
is your therapist?
yeah, this is
Wow.
my social work, my therapist, licensed clinical social worker, so psychologist. So she had this. So I was like, man, all my safety's gone. I was like freaking out. Like, what am I going to do? So I made sure I understood how important my mental health was. So I remember going to Psychology Today and putting my address, my zip code, what am I trying to look with in insurance? And then, I got like, here's 10 people. So I started emailing them. I emailed 5 or 6 people. 2 of them messaged me back and said, "Oh, they can't see patients right now." One of them did and said, "I can, but I only work hours," which is like basically, 8 to 5, 8 to 4 was their hours. I said, "Okay." And I said, remember telling them, I said, "Well, the mental health is very important to me." And I'm so grateful I did. I mean, she's still my therapist now, and
Oh, that's cool.
she's helped me accomplish so much through it. And which leads to a lot of my advocacy work because, before my trauma, I had fantastic insurance, but, our American health system is just awful. And they started trading insurance around when I switched companies or company changed to a different insurance to save money. And, I'm spending, $25,000 a year on my insurance because that's how little they'll want to cover. So, and a lot of it's mental health. And people will say, "Well, we have different therapists." I said, "You're exactly right." And I'll tell them immediately. I said, "So which babysitter do you want me to send to you right now? Who do you want me to do your pet sitter?" "I'll send someone." And they get really defensive. I was like, "Exactly. So don't tell me you can do a different therapist when this person's been helped me out since my trauma, since, after my brain injury. Like, how dare you start trying to say, oh, you can just use this person,"
Wow.
because I don't accept that at all. So that made me realize I need to do more. Yeah, I needed to fight more for this. So I reached out to my state.
Hold on one second. We're getting too deep.
Yep.
Hold on. Let me pull you back.
Yep.
Let me pull you back. I have questions. Okay, I want to talk about the mental health. How did your mental health struggles shift after the accident?
So the crash, the trauma definitely made me feel very isolated. It made me feel very alone in it. I mean, brain injuries, again, invisible, but I remember being trapped in the darkness and doing whatever they could to escape the madness and I would say trip the darkness after my friends in the band, the Kuna Coil. They have a song, but it's about coming through. For me, it's the journey of coming through a brain injury, of just trying to get out of the dark. So, that has a lot of panic, a lot of fear. Males that are traumatic brain injury survivors are twice as likely to, die by suicide than a regular person. So
Did you
it's
think,
definitely
was that something that you thought about?
I can't really say yes or no. I do know that I had someone that I just knew, a gamer friend, and just I knew him in a game. And when he died by suicide, he I don't like saying commit because that seems like it's a crime.
Right.
When he died by suicide, it was very jarring to me. So that couldn't be on the table because I knew how hard it was, and someone that I didn't even really. I just knew, and I was like, "There's absolutely no way I can do that," because I can imagine people I love. So it wasn't easy, but and the frustration and anxiety, they say, depression is a lion charging at you in the grass. Anxiety is being in the tall grass knowing there's a lion out there.
Oh, wow.
So I'd rather have depression than anxiety, but when I had them both, it's just fantastic. So again, right side brain injury is a lot of your, executive functions, a lot of your, your concentration, your compulsivity, which leads to a lot of anxiety and anger.
That would make
So
sense.
it definitely exacerbated all situations. I mean, I was probably extremely high functioning ADHD before, but after my trauma, it definitely became more prevalent, and I needed to, see doctors and seek help for that to be, help have that under care. So I always I feel, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I do believe that brain injuries will exacerbate or greatly amplify certain conditions that might have been underlying.
That makes
Again,
sense.
I've been in different talks, I've been in webinars, I've done keynotes, and I've heard doctors speak of similar instances, and I can only just say what worked or what happened through my experiences. Something that's very conscious.
Well, that's fair,
Being
and
a
that's
trauma
honest.
survivor.
Yeah, that's honest. What
I can't ever
misconception?
give medical advice. Sorry, go ahead.
No. What misconceptions about depression or anxiety do you wish more people understood?
All right. What list do we want to start with? That just because they look okay does not mean we're okay. People fake it till you make it is
Nice.
one of the strongest ones. I mean, so that's number one. Number two, everyone can get depressed. Everyone can be anxious, and that doesn't make them ill doesn't make them a different type of person. It just makes them human.
Nice.
So trying to understand and learn what causes and what's the root of some of your instances. They say anger is a secondary emotion. So I learned that in my first, with my first therapist when I was working through cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. So I figured, what was the thing that triggered me to be angry? Well, being frustrated or belittled. Well, guess what? When you're in the hospital, can't use your hands, people have to clean you up. Very belittling and very frustrating. So instead of just going towards anger, I kind of broke down that understanding of myself and said, okay, I'm just in a bad situation. This is what I'm doing. So like I always try to challenge myself when I'm frustrated, getting frustrated or belittled. What I try to do is I try to do the exact opposite. So I'll try to explain things to people to help with stop the frustration or explain it to myself out loud. And then if I'm starting to get very belittled, I'll do something to help lift someone else up because that shows me
Oh,
that,
okay.
I'm not that.
Showing
So,
gratitude.
yeah, attitude of gratitude is what another mentor says.
Yes.
So, depression was definitely there. There wasn't many support groups active after my trauma,
Did you
but
know that you were depressed?
Oh,
Okay,
100%. I mean, I
okay.
was depressed before that. And
Okay. It
that's
was more.
funny because my music is a lot of dirges. It's very,
Okay.
wife's like, yeah, so
Has
you
it
could
changed
definitely
now? Are
tell.
you still there? Has the
Oh,
music changed?
absolutely not. Yeah, no, I mean, it got even better. I mean, I became friends. So again, before my trauma, for my crash, when I was going through separation, I had this radio station and it had a lot of dark lyrics and
Were
dark
you on the
undertones
radio
because
station?
I was my ears. No, I
Oh,
was
okay,
never
okay,
on the
okay, okay.
radio. No,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
wow, that's
but
cool.
yeah, yeah. But my Pandora was on, so it was
Got it.
always like Typo and Lacuna Coil and Deftones and Opeth. They have a lot of dark undertones and but they spoke about real emotions, so I
Okay.
can connect to it.
Got
So
it.
that's why I tend to listen to that. And but again, we're going to go down this path, but that's how I was. I really some of these bands inspired me. I never got to see my favorite band Type O before the lead singer passed. I put
Oh,
it off. I had work and I was like, I'll do it next year. And then he passed. So heart aneurysm. So I was like,
wow.
okay, I'm never going to not take the opportunity. So that's when I started going to concerts more. Again, after a
Nice.
brain injury is very tough, very awkward, very intimidating. But I said, I want to see a band that really helped me through my trauma. I like a harder music, but I like a female vocalist, such as Within Temptation. Very similar to like the Amy Lee and Evanescence type of
Oh, okay.
music, but I like a harder sound and
Mm-hmm.
that siren-esque voice that kind
It
of
speaks
cuts
to you.
through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the lead vocalist Christina Scabia, she does a lot. Then the band Lacuna Coil does a lot of outreach and does a lot of. They're really good with their community. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go meet them, and so I did, and
Nice.
I talked to some people, and then it was cool to meet these people. Then I said, I'm gonna go see them again. So I didn't see them the first time until 2019, right before pandemic. Pandemic happened, and they're Italian, so they had a lot of. I mean, Italy was the first one really showing its effects. So, but her compassion was good. I started following on Instagram, and then now all of a sudden I'm following a band literally around the globe, going to
Oh,
London to
wow.
see them play
Oh,
all over the
you become a
country.
groupie now. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool though. I know people from seeing these shows that some of them local, some of
Oh,
them like,
wow.
oh, this is my 120th show, this is my 70th show, and it's such a cool community that I've met. And again, it's in my. We'll talk more. Obviously, I have so many stories. Obviously, I'm going, but the I was able to reach out to the artists and because they
I was
suddenly
about
they
to
run
say,
a Twitch
did you make
channel.
contact with
Yeah,
her after all this?
yeah.
Okay. Did she
They have a
contact
Twitch
you
channel.
back?
Yeah, oh yeah. So we have a Twitch channel. We would
Oh,
message them
wow.
on Twitch, and I would be there. And then she had a big thing one time on Instagram where she posted something about like F strokes or something like that. It was a campaign, so she had a shirt on, and I was like, I want to reach out to her because I volunteer with a lot of stroke survivors as well in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to start this conversation about brain injury, what it is, and she was pretty fascinated. She loved my story, hearing about me coming through because music. So she decided to do an interview with myself and another brain injury survivor, and it was
nice.
It was amazing. And I know that it's impactful because literally a week later, she was on another major YouTube channel and Charismatic Voice, and they interviewed her, and she mentioned a fan reached out to her and told about a brain injury and how their music helped them. And I'm like,
Oh,
wow,
nice.
that's something, so I was able to help change someone to show their creativity. And
I love that.
that's what I've tried to do since my trauma. Always take a second to say thanks to someone. I mean, there's
let me
not many
ask you
pictures of
this.
my trauma. Yep.
What does healing mean to you now as a trauma and brain injury survivor?
Healing to me now. So healing is a weird word. So I'm healed. I healed really well physically, mentally, I still have nerve issues. Everybody has it, but my healing now is, I don't want to say it's maxed out. It can change anytime, but for me, healing is finding ways to support others. That
Oh,
has been
great.
my choice in my life, and taking this experience to, I've learned through another mentor to state, why not me? So I never get in a pity party. Why not me? As well, I'm a 35-year-old male at the time. I'm a 45-year-old male now, and it's like I can handle it. Why not me? And so I do. Why not me? And I try to challenge all the norms and try to face that, with my vulnerability exposed, to show people that they are not alone in these journeys, and that we are, we're all part of the same. We're all together in this crazy world, good or bad, and trying to recognize that is very critical for anybody in their healing.
Yes.
So for me, healing is 100% when I help others and able to help support in ways I never thought was fathomable before my trauma.
I love that. Great answer. That's a great answer. Let me ask you, what would you say is, if someone was currently living in this type of situation, isolation or early stage recovery, what advice would you give to someone who might be dealing with this that maybe you wished you had been received when you started your healing?
Right. I will say that I would say to them that you are not alone. Trauma is the number one cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45.
Wow.
Technically 1 to 17, but 1 to 17 is gunshots, number one cause of death.
Wow.
But it's still considered trauma. So trauma is the number one cause of death between those ages. So I would let people know that they are not alone in this. And every incident modality could be a fall, could be running over by a vehicle, could be a stabbing, gunshot, whatever. And that people all across the spectrum. But the one thing that keeps us together and communicative is the recovery, is going through that dark times, is feeling alone. And we're not alone. When we speak our vulnerabilities, that'll show people that we're there, that we are, with them, and that they are not alone in these journeys. And, when I've done that, I've had people reach out to me and let them know how trauma affected them by, car accidents for spouses or in-laws. And again, it is a very small world. So when you have one of those injuries, it's important to reach out to others, to support groups, reach out to whoever you can. And even if it's not someone that might be a trauma survivor, just reach out to someone to say, hey, how you doing? Because, have an attitude of gratitude. And when you can smile, as I smile, think about opening the door for someone and smiling at them, made them feel good. And it makes us feel good too.
Yeah.
So just trying to allow yourself to not get stuck in which is justifiable sometimes, the anger, what happened, anger,
Of course.
feel of the loss of what you have, because everything is loss and grief. But we only grow through challenges. That's a stupid part of the human race.
Very
We
true.
only grow through challenges.
Yeah.
So allow yourself the grace you would give me, a loved one or a friend. Allow yourself the grace to learn the path, learn this as you go along as well.
I love that. That's so great. Nice. Very nicely said. What do you find is the most common questions or messages you might receive from people you support or advocate for?
Well, number one, you look okay. Nothing looks wrong with you. Why are you so upset
is that?
about it? No. Yeah. people not understanding that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Working with brain injury survivors has taught me a lot. I mean, there was a person that came to my wedding, so we'll talk about that in a second. But, I didn't know her before it, and I met her through this mentoring program at the hospital. And, her accident happened in 82 and closed head injury. And when you speak to her, you know, it's difficult for people to hear or understand if they're just like not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I promise they understand everything that we say. We just don't take the time to listen. And that's really important to someone because you're devaluing who they are by just ignoring what they're saying, or, oh, well, you're slow, doesn't matter. So I've learned how to communicate better through my brain injury, being able to speak to someone directly, make sure I'm very clear.
Yes.
And I slow down, give myself, space between stimulus and response is where the power lies. Viktor Frankl, just understanding that if I slow down, count to 3, I can state things because they're not to fill up space, to give myself a chance to think and breathe.
Yeah, digest it a bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a long answer to understand that we're not necessarily, people don't necessarily have to wear a badge of what they went through on them, but they still should be treated like a person, because treat them like you would want to be treated yourself. And we do that. It kind of really helps everybody's healing and everybody's where they are.
Right. So true. That is so true. I wanted to ask, you talk about tabletop gaming as part of your recovery. Are you still doing tabletop gaming? Is it something that's still happening now?
Oh yeah. Like I said, my nerd street cred's pretty high, but I just came back from PAX Unplugged. I'm on a
I don't know
committee for
what
one of the
that
role
is.
player.
Please tell us all.
PAX Unplugged, yeah. So PAX Unplugged is a Penny Arcade Expo, but they have a convention that is just for tabletop, not tabletop card games, not powered. PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia. So I volunteer for one of the major publishers, organizations, Organized Play Foundation, for Paizo. They run a game called Pathfinder. It's one of the biggest competitor to the world's most, oldest role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, okay.
And that really helped me through my recovery. So I believe I mentioned earlier, going to the games after trauma, I was in a wheelchair, but I used tabletop games to kind of separate myself and get into a public space, get into where people can talk to me, learn from me, I can learn from them, and being that uncomfortable place. And doing that also allowed me to heal as well, because I found ways to support others. So, a survivor, doesn't matter what, is isolated. They do feel alone. And, with organized play, running the games, I was able to connect to people to give them a safe space, from LGBTQ to someone just struggling with whatever. Yeah, it's every, every place. And the nice thing is they come together through this game that people can find silly, but we are able to give them a safe space for that. And that's something that is very powerful for me with my recovery, because again, I felt something, I was so lost after my brain injury, 100%. And allowing them to be creative in that space is something that's a gift that is great. I mean, I've had people reach out to me. So I run and organize all the events in Northern Virginia and DC for Organized Play, Pathfinder, and Starfinder. So I run conventions all up on the East Coast.
Wow.
I've run almost 400 games of the one new system, and I do what I can because it's rewarding to me, and it's rewarding to the community. So
that's awesome.
And that's definitely been thank you. It's definitely been a real thing, and a real hope for my healing. And so, example, we use miniatures and other items, and it's math rocks, dice. And I remember before my trauma, I paid people to paint my little figurines of my miniatures. But during pandemic, I was so anxious because I couldn't go to live games. It was crushing to me. Pandemic created me. It was just like after my trauma, where I felt alone, stuck in everything. But I started learning how to paint these miniatures, and then all of a sudden I'm that's how I'm beating I'm in therapy. I'm listening to books, I'm painting these little miniatures and
Nice.
learning to do it. So for me, that was again a therapeutic step
Mm.
that the gaming helped lead
Bring you
me
to,
into.
yeah.
And the nice thing is about organized play, it's literally around the globe. So when I went to London to see the Lacuna Coil concert, there was a comic convention. I met people at that convention to play games with. So
Oh,
it's like,
nice.
ooh, it's really cool. No matter where I go, and I had to travel the country, different sites, Austin or California, wherever, Denver, I would go and I can play a game when I'm out there. So I'm going to Tennessee tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to play a game down there. I'm going through work, but I'm able to do something with my community to help refill me.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially when you say it's worldwide and you can, wherever you're traveling, you can find that sense of support. And yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize that it was so big until after you said all this. I knew people were doing it, of course, here, and they talk about it. It's people were playing, but I didn't realize that it was so worldwide. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's really neat. Again, I've learned, I learned a lot through my HIPAA training with the hospital. Because I volunteer for trauma survivors, and I volunteer in the hospital. So I've learned a lot about that, just working with people and being just communicative. But when I work with some amazing, when I not work, when I play and run for some amazing people that are LGBTQ, that, they and them, it is so wonderful to give them a space to be creative,
Mm,
because it's like when you go when I go to a concert, I tell people, I was like, remember, there's thousands of like-minded people here for one thing.
yeah,
So even if you're different on so much,
we've come
there's one
together on
thing
one
that
thing.
brought you here. And
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about role-playing games and this gaming world, is
Mm,
that people can actually, you know, be be a character other than themselves, or be a character they want to be. If they feel trapped in their own body, you can make a crazy troll, or make a crazy alien, whatever, just because you want to feel unique. And it's really important in the world right now, is just having people being able to feel like they can find a place to belong, no matter
mm-hmm.
how hard it is.
So true. So, so true. If listeners take away only one message from your story, what do you hope that it is?
What do I hope this is? So understand you're not alone, and that healing is not a zero sum game where just because you're doing well or not doesn't take away from anybody else. And understanding that every day, I promise, the sun will rise tomorrow, and hope is a free medicine. So having that little bit of hope can help us, move through the rough and the rest of the world.
I love that. You're so true. Just a little bit of hope. For sure. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. I like to ask all my guests this final question. Is your glass half empty or half full?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say it's overflowing, half
All right
full,
now.
because I, I said to myself, I was like, okay, 3 years ago, I would have never imagined traveling the world and being friends with an international band, knowing people from around the globe,
Mm,
being reached out to by, Amelia Clark's Foundation for Brain Injury, and like featuring me as an advocate. I never thought, 3 years before that, I'd go to Congress, I'd speak to class, teams and students. And before that, I never would have imagined being able to do a keynote speech
wow.
and mentor. So, and that's in 9 years.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
and so I am always ready to fill up my glass a little more, because there's more I can give, and there's more I want to do to help others understand that nobody's alone in this whole journey called life.
Hmm.
That, find your journey, if you will, find your path and where you are.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I just, like I mentioned, you're not alone in this journey, and know that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to find ways to be creative, from music to games to just, hanging out with your pets, talking to them. It still allows us
Right.
to be in a safe space, and everybody deserves happiness, and
So true.
including, ourselves.
So true. So true. We sure do. We all deserve it. Definitely. Thank you so much. I really wanted to say, if people want to find out a little bit more about you, how can they reach you? Please tell us.
So I have a simple little link tree at Gift of Perspective, GIFT of Perspective, all one word, on Linktree. I also have Instagram that I post some stuff about my concerts at NPR_nerd, and I'll put any podcasts or any other activities I'm in. And so, and through that site, I've been able to reach others that have seen something. They'll talk to me because they listened to my webinar, but they're from Costa Rica, and they'll look at
Nice.
the other things, or they'll reach out to me because they listen to my interview with Christina from the band, and
Worldwide.
let them know that they're an EMT driver in New Zealand, and how important it is hearing my story. So
I love
that's where I can put everything out there, and it's also good for me to see a timeline. So anyhow, it was a long thing. At
No problem.
Linktree at Gift of Perspective.
Excellent. And all of this information will be listed when the podcast is released. So that way everyone can just it's a click away. So no one has to be writing anything down, because they don't do that anymore. So, but it will be there for sure for everybody to be able to contact you easily. Thank you so much for being a guest here on Glass Half Full. We are so happy to have had you today. Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it. This was a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate your flexibility in making this happen. This was great.
My pleasure. I appreciate you sharing your story, and we want you to continue on with your message that you're putting back forth and helping others, and, just giving that support. I think it's great. And through that, we are blessed, when we give of ourselves. So it's great. I expect to hear great things continuing on for you as the time continues. So we will definitely continue to be in touch. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
You have a great day. We'll be in touch soon.
All right, cool. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello, listeners of Glass Half Full. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of our podcast. I'm your host, Chris Levins, and I want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for being a part of our supportive community. Remember, Glass Half Full is not just a podcast. It's a safe platform for everyone to share their life experiences. Your stories and voice matter, and we appreciate you for being here with us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our future content, please subscribe, follow, and rate our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us reach even more listeners who can benefit from these valuable life experiences. As we wrap up this episode, always keep in mind, you are blessed. No matter the challenges you face, there's a reservoir of strength within you. Until next time, stay positive, and remember, the glass is always half full. See ya!